The ocean doesn't speak here. It remembers. It remembers the centuries of storms that came and went, the ships that arrived from across the world, and the islands that stood unmoved, patient as time itself. It remembers the empires that passed like waves, the trade winds that carried silk, spices, and stories, the silence between battles, the calm after colonization. Now, in the heart of the Pacific, a quiet revolution hums beneath the tropical sky. It doesn't come from war or empire. It comes from light, wind, and the human will to change. From a nation once written off as developing, emerges a project that may have outpaced its former ruler. The United States once shaped its roads and rules, but now the Philippines is shaping its own future, not with borrowed blueprints, but with bold ambition, not with imitation, but innovation. In the Philippines, the future has already arrived. It glows in solar fields and whispers through wind farms. It pulses in classrooms and powers coastal towns. And this is the proof. Proof that resilience can become revolution. Proof that islands can lead continents. Proof that the quiet can become powerful. The ocean doesn't speak here, but it listens, and it remembers. Long before the world spoke of green revolutions, the Philippines learned to live between extremes, typhoons and droughts, abundance and loss. A land of 7,641 islands, where every coastline is both a border and a bridge, where water defines identity and wind shapes destiny. The American century had left its mark. Military bases, highways, a language of commerce and dependence. For much of the 20th century, Manila looked outward for progress, and often westward for approval. But beneath the surface of that relationship, something quiet was building. A desire for self-sufficiency, for sovereignty, not in politics alone, but in power. In the 1990s, as the U.S. debated oil, the Philippines faced its own truth. Blackouts were not just economic, they were existential. Entire towns would vanish into darkness. Factories paused, schools closed early, hospitals ran on hope and diesel. And the question grew louder. How can a nation move forward if its future runs on borrowed light? So began the first whispers of an idea. An idea that energy could come not from imported oil, but from the earth, from the air, and from the sea. At first, it sounded like poetry, too fragile for policy, too idealistic for industry. But poetry has always been the language of revolutions. And in the Philippines, revolutions often begin quietly. They begin in villages, in classrooms, in conversations. They begin with questions, not declarations. Could the sun replace the shipment? Could the wind replace the wire? Could the islands power themselves and each other? The answers came slowly, but they came with conviction. Local engineers began to experiment. Communities built microgrids from scratch. Solar panels appeared on school rooftops. Wind turbines rose beside rice fields. The government listened, cautiously, curiously, and then it acted. Policies shifted, incentives emerged, partnerships formed between provinces and private firms. The dream of energy independence began to take shape, not in theory, but in infrastructure. This was not just a technical shift, it was a cultural one. Energy was no longer just a commodity. It became a conversation about equity, about access. It became a movement, led not by megawatts, but by meaning. The Philippines was no longer waiting for rescue. It was building resilience, one solar cell at a time. And in that quiet construction, a new kind of power was born. Not just electrical, but emotional. Not just national, but personal. The origins of the revolution were not in headlines or handshakes. They were in homes that stayed lit after sunset, in students who studied without candles, in farmers who irrigated without fuel. This was the beginning of a future powered by the islands themselves, and the ocean, watching as always, remembered. The turning winds. In the far north, where the wind cuts across Ilocos Norte, a new sound rose above the waves, the rhythmic breath of turbines. Bangui Bay Wind Farm, once a modest experiment, now an icon. Each turbine stands like a sentinel over the sea, tall, white, almost sacred. They do not just spin, they speak. They speak of resilience, of vision, of velocity. When they began spinning in the early 2000s, few imagined this would ignite a movement that would change Asia's energy map. The US had wind farms too, scattered across plains and coasts, but its ambitions were slowed by politics, lawsuits, and inertia. In the Philippines, necessity burned faster than bureaucracy. Communities could not afford delay. They needed light. They needed power. By 2020, the country had quietly installed over 1,000 megawatts of renewable capacity. Solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal, woven together like threads of a new tapestry. And while the turbines turned, communities learned to manage, maintain, and profit locally. Energy was no longer a distant utility. It became a shared responsibility. Local technicians trained in wind maintenance. Schools taught grid literacy alongside math and science. Women led cooperatives that reinvested profits into education and healthcare. The winds were just the beginning. They were the first breath of a larger transformation. A transformation not just of infrastructure, but of identity, of what it means to build power from within. Ilocos Norte became more than a province. It became a symbol of what happens when necessity meets innovation. And the turbines, still spinning, remind the world that even the smallest gust can carry a revolution. The sun rises in Nueva Ecija. In the plains of Nueva Ecija, sunlight falls like gold dust. It settles over endless rows of panels, a shimmering ocean of mirrors. This is the Nueva Ecija Solar Farm, one of the largest in Southeast Asia, and one of the boldest. A single site capable of powering hundreds of thousands of homes. Every morning, as the sun rises, its reflection ripples through the panels like a wave of light across the land. The farm does not just generate electricity, it generates confidence in what the future can look like. What makes it remarkable isn't just scale, it's ownership. Unlike Western megaprojects driven by corporate giants, many of the Philippines' new energy ventures are public-private hybrids. They involve cooperatives, universities, and local investors. They are built not just for profit, but for participation, for shared growth. In the United States, solar expansion still meets walls. Lobbying, partisanship, legacy utilities all slow the sun's momentum. In the Philippines, necessity forged consensus, and consensus became momentum. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. Local farmers lease land for panels. Students intern at solar labs. Barangays vote on energy priorities. The sun became more than a source. It became a story of how light can be local. Even now, the silence tells its own story. Progress doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums quietly in the fields. Nueva Ecija is no longer just a province. It is a prototype of how energy can empower without overpowering. And every sunrise over its panels is a reminder that the future doesn't need to be imported. It can be grown, row by row, reflection by reflection, light by light. The power beneath the earth. But the Philippines' greatest secret lies below. It sits atop the Pacific Ring of Fire, a trembling chain of volcanoes and tectonic power. What once brought fear now brings energy. The country is the world's third largest producer of geothermal power, only behind the United States and Indonesia. Steam drawn from deep beneath the crust spins turbines that never sleep. Where the U.S. debates potential, the Philippines lives in reality, turning heat into electricity, 24 hours a day, clean, constant, and nearly eternal. Each plant is more than infrastructure.
It's a covenant with the earth, a promise to use power without destruction. But even with all this progress, the world barely noticed, because revolutions that happen quietly are easy to overlook. The floating future. In 2025, another frontier began, floating solar. Lakes once used for fishing became canvases for innovation. In Laguna de Bay, engineers anchored massive grids of solar panels on water, reducing land use and evaporation simultaneously. It was a vision that merged sustainability with local livelihood. Fishermen now doubled as maintenance crews, and the data stunned the world. Floating solar panels produced 11 to 15% more energy than land-based systems, cooled by the natural breeze and water reflection. The project was so advanced, even U.S. states lagged behind by decades in regulation, coordination, and design. For the first time, analysts whispered what once seemed unthinkable. The Philippines wasn't catching up to the West, it was surpassing it. But the world was already shifting. Today, as nations chase net zero, the Philippines stands at a crossroads, not of dependence, but of leadership. Across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, energy grids now speak to each other. They communicate in real time, managed by AI and satellite forecasting. Demand is predicted before it arrives, and supply adjusts instantly. The country's first green energy auction program has drawn billions in investment, not for extraction, but for creation, clean, scalable, and shared. The U.S., meanwhile, wrestles with aging grids and decaying transmission lines. It struggles beneath the weight of politics, denial, and delay. Where Washington debates, Manila builds with urgency and clarity. Where others plan for 2050, the Philippines acts for 2030. From the Sierra Madre Mountains to the Mindoro coasts, small communities now run microgrids powered entirely by solar and storage. Children study by light their grandparents once thought impossible. Hospitals in remote islands stay open through the night, not on diesel fumes, but on sunlight captured days before. The archipelago connects its last dark villages to clean power, and a subtle truth emerges from the silence. Progress is no longer measured by size, but by sincerity. It's not about being the biggest, it's about being the boldest and the most inclusive. Even now, this is not a nation chasing modernity. It is a nation redefining it on its own terms. The Philippines does not follow the future. It helps shape it with every solar panel, every wind turbine. Energy is no longer a distant commodity. It is a local conversation about dignity, access, and equity. The country's energy map is no longer top-down. It is bottom-up, built by barangays, cooperatives, and classrooms. AI forecasts demand, but people define direction. The grid is not just smart, it is sensitive. Sensitive to geography, to culture, to community. And in that sensitivity lies strength. The Philippines is not waiting for recognition, it is earning it through resilience and reinvention. The present moment is not a pause, it is a pivot toward a new kind of power, one that listens before it lights, one that includes before it innovates, and one that remembers that energy is not just electricity, it is empathy, endurance, and evolution. A century ago, the United States built the model of industrial power: coal, steel, engines, the age of smoke and might. Factories roared, cities rose, and rivers ran black with progress. But that age is ending, slowly, inevitably, unmistakably. And in its shadow, a new kind of strength is taking form. Quiet, clean, collective, built not on conquest, but on care. The Philippines, once written off as an afterthought in global progress, has done what empires failed to imagine. It turned its vulnerability, islands, storms, heat, into innovation. It turned its geography into strategy. It turned its silence into song.
And what it remembers now is light. Light that does not blind, but guides. Light that does not dominate, but democratizes. Light that does not fade because it is shared. This is not just a closing reflection, it is an opening invitation to rethink what power means, to reimagine what leadership looks like, to recognize that the future is not a place we reach, it is a path we choose together. The Philippines has chosen its path, and in doing so, it may have lit the way for the rest of us. You've witnessed the quiet turning of a global chapter. Now see what comes next. Click now and continue the journey.